Everyone thinks the Browns are locked in at pick number 6, but behind the scenes there's a debate that could completely flip their draft plan. One decision here doesn't just affect one player, it could reshape the entire franchise direction. And what they do next is far from settled. But the real question is, have they already made the decision in silence? Everyone thinks the Browns are simply doing what every team does this time of year, evaluating prospects, weighing options, and preparing for pick number 6. But behind closed doors, there's something more interesting happening. Because this isn't just about picking a player anymore, it's about controlling the entire draft conversation before the first name is even called. One name suddenly keeps coming up in the discussion: Jeremiyah Love. And not in a quiet, routine, he's a solid prospect way. We're talking about a level of praise that immediately raises eyebrows across the league. Comparisons to Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs-style versatility. The kind of language GMs usually avoid unless they want attention or misdirection. And that's where things get complicated. Because if Jeremiyah Love really is that special, then the Browns sitting at 6 could mean everything or nothing at all. Are they genuinely considering him as a franchise-level offensive weapon? Or is this the oldest trick in the book, turning up the volume on one prospect to force other teams into panic mode? That's the part nobody outside the building can answer, and it matters more than people realize. Because every word from Andrew Berry right now isn't just evaluation, it's influence. It can shift boards, it can create pressure, it can trigger calls from teams trying to jump the line before Cleveland steals their guy. But here's the twist: NFL history tells us something different. GMs don't just randomly overhype players like this without a reason. Sometimes it's genuine belief, sometimes it's leverage, and sometimes it's both at the same time. So now the entire draft conversation becomes unstable. If Love is the target at 6, Cleveland might be signaling their future offense already. But if he's not, then someone else is about to get played into a move they didn't plan on making. And that's what makes this situation dangerous for every team watching closely. Because the Browns aren't just picking anymore, they might be controlling the board. And the real question is, who's actually reacting to who? But what if none of this praise is meant for the Browns at all, and someone else is about to make a costly mistake because of it? Every year before the NFL draft, teams act like everything is clear, like the board is already set, the targets are obvious, and the top picks are just waiting to be announced. But the Browns at pick number 6 are not operating like that at all. Because right now, everything coming out of Cleveland sounds simple on the surface: Andrew Berry talking about prospects, praising talent, saying the usual everything is on the table type of lines. But when you actually listen closely, there's a second layer to everything he's saying, a layer that doesn't match the surface story. And that's where Jeremiyah Love suddenly enters the picture. One minute he's just another top prospect in the class, the next minute he's being described in the same breath as Christian McCaffrey-level dual-threat weapons, Jahmyr Gibbs-type explosiveness, a dynamic player who could change an offense instantly. That kind of language doesn't just happen randomly this close to the draft. Because now the entire league is forced to ask a simple question that doesn't have a simple answer: is Cleveland genuinely considering a running back at pick 6, or are they setting a trap? And that's where things get dangerous for everyone else. If Berry is telling the truth, then the Browns might be preparing to make one of the boldest offensive picks in recent memory, betting on a player they believe can redefine their identity overnight. But if this is a smokescreen, then it becomes something far more calculated. Because suddenly, Jeremiyah Love isn't just a prospect anymore, he's a signal, a distraction, a pressure point designed to force other teams into thinking Cleveland is about to do something unpredictable at 6, when in reality, the real target might be completely different. And the NFL draft is where that kind of noise turns into chaos. Teams start second-guessing, trade calls start happening, boards start shifting, one rumor becomes 3, and before you know it, someone is either jumping ahead of Cleveland or panicking into a trade that never needed to happen. So now the Browns aren't just evaluating players at pick 6. They might be shaping the entire draft without ever revealing their real intention. And that's what makes this situation so unpredictable. Because in the NFL draft, the loudest praise is usually never the full story. But the real question is, when the clock starts ticking, is Cleveland playing chess, or are they about to bluff the entire league into a move they didn't need to make? On paper, trading a top 10 pick sounds simple. You move down, collect extra assets, gain flexibility, and still land a quality player. But in reality, when you're sitting at pick number 6 in the NFL draft, the entire conversation changes because that pick is no longer just an asset. It becomes a power position. And that's exactly why deals involving known top 10 slots almost never happen. Unlike mid-first round picks where teams feel comfortable sliding down and gambling on depth, the top 10 is where franchises expect certainty. You're not just drafting talent, you're drafting a potential cornerstone, a player who is expected to become a long-term starter if not a face of the franchise. That's why teams hesitate. Because once you move out of that range, you're not just losing a player, you're losing access to elite-tier prospects that may never reach you again. And in most draft classes, the difference between pick 6 and pick 16 isn't just talent, it's trajectory, it's franchise impact. History makes that even clearer. True top 10 picks that are traded while the slot is known are extremely rare. Most trades involve future first-round picks where the exact position is still unknown. That uncertainty makes the deal safer. But when the number is already locked in, teams suddenly freeze. Because now every decision carries full accountability. If you trade pick 6 and the player selected there becomes a superstar, that decision follows you for years. Front offices don't forget that. Owners don't forget that. Fans definitely don't forget that. And that's where the pressure explodes. You also have to consider the other side of the equation. Who are you actually getting in return? More picks, later selections, players who are less proven than the elite talent sitting right in front of you. That's why the only time teams truly consider moving a top 10 pick is when a rare, proven-level talent is involved. A Jamar Chase-type situation, a Justin Jefferson-level projection, a player so clearly elite that the risk of passing on him is greater than the value of staying put. Otherwise, teams default to caution. Because in the top 10, you're not just making a pick. You're making a franchise decision that can define the next decade. And that's why pick 6 is one of the most dangerous positions in the entire draft board. Every NFL draft, teams convince themselves they're making the right football decision, but behind the scenes, there's always a war happening that never really gets settled. And for the Browns at pick number 6, that war is getting louder than ever. On one side, you have team need. And on paper, it looks obvious. Cleveland needs offensive firepower, a wide receiver who can actually separate, protection up front, stability for a quarterback situation that still doesn't feel completely defined. From a fan perspective, the logic is simple: fix what's broken, fill the gaps, build around the weaknesses that showed up all season long. That's the easy answer. But NFL front offices don't always think in easy answers. Because on the other side of this war is something more dangerous: best player available. And this is where everything gets unpredictable. Best player available doesn't care about depth charts. It doesn't care about public expectations. It doesn't care that fans are screaming for a wide receiver or offensive line help. It only cares about one thing: who is the highest rated player on the board when your pick comes up. And that philosophy has quietly changed drafts for years. Because teams that chase need often reach, they force picks, they draft for fit instead of dominance, and sometimes that decision sets a franchise back for years. But teams that fully commit to BPA can create chaos of their own because they end up taking players at positions nobody expected. Defensive players when offense is needed, running backs when quarterbacks are the storyline, surprise picks that instantly split the fan base. And that's exactly where Cleveland sits right now. If they go need, they're predictable, safe, easy to understand. But if they go BPA, suddenly everything opens up. Jeremiyah Love becomes a real conversation, defensive stars enter the picture, names no one is talking about at 6 suddenly become realistic. And that's what makes this war so difficult. Because the Browns aren't just choosing a player at pick 6. They're choosing an identity for how this front office wants to be remembered. And whichever side wins, this battle won't just shape the draft. It could define the entire direction of the franchise for years to come. Every NFL franchise likes to believe it has an identity on draft night, a clear philosophy, a system that guides every decision when the clock is ticking. But for the Browns at pick number 6, that identity isn't just unclear, it feels like it's constantly shifting in real time. One year, they look like a team chasing upside at premium positions. The next year, they lean into surprise picks that nobody outside the building saw coming. And then there are moments where they seem fully committed to best player available, even when it clashes with obvious roster needs that fans can see from a mile away. That inconsistency is what makes Cleveland so hard to predict. Because when you try to project what they'll do at pick 6, you're not just evaluating prospects, you're trying to decode a front office pattern that doesn't always stay consistent from one draft to the next. And that uncertainty creates tension not just outside the building, but likely inside it too. Some teams enter the draft with a fixed board. They know their top tier, they know their drop-offs, they know exactly when they're willing to move and when they won't budge. But Cleveland has developed a reputation for flexibility that sometimes looks like strategy and sometimes looks like unpredictability. That's why names like Jeremiyah Love suddenly feel real in the conversation. Not because running back is the obvious need at 6, but because Cleveland has shown they're willing to prioritize traits over expectations, over positional value, over what analysts think they should do. And that's also why defensive or off-the-radar selections can never be ruled out. Because in past drafts, they've already proven they're willing to take players the public didn't project anywhere near their slot, and then justify it internally with grading systems nobody else gets to see. The result is a draft identity that feels fluid instead of fixed. And that makes evaluating them almost impossible. Because every assumption about Cleveland can be right and wrong at the same time. Which is why at pick 6, the Browns don't just create draft drama. They create uncertainty for the entire league trying to guess what kind of team they actually want to be. When the Browns are on the clock at pick number 6, nothing about that moment is going to feel stable. On the surface, it's just a single selection in a long draft, but in reality, it's one of those picks that can instantly send shockwaves through the entire first round. Because multiple scenarios are sitting on the table, and none of them feel far-fetched. The first possibility is the most controlled one. Cleveland stays put and takes their guy, but even that doesn't narrow things down much. Their guy could mean a wide receiver to fix explosive play issues. It could mean an offensive tackle to stabilize protection long-term, or it could even mean a defensive player if the board falls in a way they didn't expect. Staying at 6 doesn't guarantee clarity, it just locks in the moment of truth. Then there's the trade-down scenario, which quietly has just as much pressure behind it. If another team gets aggressive, trying to jump ahead for a quarterback or a top-tier offensive weapon, the Browns could pivot instantly. That would shift everything from who do we take to how much value can we extract. In that moment, pick 6 becomes a leverage tool instead of a selection. And that's where things start to get chaotic. Because the second Cleveland even hints at moving down, the entire top 10 can start to wobble. Teams outside the range suddenly start calling. Front offices begin second-guessing their boards. One rumor becomes multiple conversations. And suddenly, everyone is reacting to Cleveland instead of the other way around. Then there's the wildcard scenario, the unexpected pick. This is where all the Jeremiyah Love talk, all the positional debates, and all the smoke screen theories collide. Cleveland could shock the entire draft by taking a player that doesn't match public expectations at all. Not because it's random, but because their internal board values something completely different than what analysts projected. And that's the real danger of pick 6. It's not just about who they choose, it's about how that choice changes every pick that follows. Because once Cleveland moves, every team behind them has to adjust instantly. And in that kind of pressure environment, one decision at 6 doesn't just shape a roster. It reshapes the entire draft night in real time.